Today we're going to talk about giving advice, paying special attention to verbs in the present tense and the verb deber. Los materiales. The materials that you will need for this lesson are your vocab list, a writing instrument, and your notes handout. Giving advice. If someone were to ask you, ¿Qué debo hacer?" you will respond with debes and then the verb in the infinitive. Debes is the equivalent of necesitas in that you're telling someone what they should do. So you're saying, you should do this. If someone were to approach you and say, Tengo una F en la clase de inglés. ¿Qué debo hacer? What advice would you give that person? Well, first, you would use the verb debes. Then, because that person is getting an F in class, you might recommend that they do their work or their study. There are a number of other pieces of advice that you can give them, but for the sake of this example, we're going to go with do your work. All right, so if you remember from a previous unit, the word for to do your work is hacer la tarea. In our next example, the person says, Yo no tengo ni un lápiz ni la lista de vocabulario. ¿Qué debo hacer? Now, we're going to assume that this is a repeat behavior that the person exhibits. So they never have their pencil on their vocab list. It's not just one moment captured in time. So take a moment to think about what piece of advice that you would recommend for them, and then write your answers on your notes handout. If you said debes estar preparado, that would be correct. You're saying you should be prepared because they never have the materials that they need, such as a pencil or their vocabulary list. In the next segment, we are giving advice for another person. So you're talking about the person, not directly to them. In that case, the question will be, ¿Qué debe hacer persona? Or what should that person do? And to respond, you would say persona debe, and then the piece of advice in the form of the verb and the infinitive. So here we have in our first example, Isaías llega tarde a la clase cada día. ¿Qué debe hacer? Well, the first thing that we want to write is Isaías' name. Then we want to use our verb debe to say what Isaías should do. Then we want to put our verb in the infinitive form. Since Isaiah llega tarde, which it means he arrives tardy or late, we might recommend that he arrives on time. Take a moment to look at your vocab list and find the word for to arrive on time. That phrase is llegar a tiempo. All right, moving on to our next example. Melanie no habla durante la actividad de hablar. ¿Qué debe hacer? In this example, we have a question of our participation. The teacher has assigned the students to engage in a speaking activity, and Melanie is not speaking. So we might recommend that she participates. Take a moment to write Melanie should participate in Spanish. Melanie debe participar. Very good. So now we've given advice when we're talking directly to the person, and we've given advice when we're speaking about another person. We've experienced the verbs debo, debes, y debe. ¿Cuál es la diferencia? Take a moment to think. and share with your partner. Debo is referring to myself. I'm saying what I should do. Debes refers to the person I'm talking to. I say, you should do this. And debe refers to the person I'm talking about. I'm talking about one person, so I'm saying he or she should do this. All right, take a breath. We're about to move on to the next segment. In this segment, we are deciding if the person is a good or a bad student and explaining why. Again, we are assuming that these are behaviors exhibited repeatedly, not just one moment in time. In our first example, it says, ¿Es Isabella una estudiante buena o mala? ¿Por qué? Well, you might not know Isabella personally, but if you see from this picture, she has an A+. So we're going to say that she is a good student. To describe Isabella as a good student, first we're going to write her name. Isabella es una estudiante buena. ¿Por qué? Now, we chose una estudiante because Isabella is a female and we want to use the feminine form of the noun. Now, we want to say that she gets good grades. If you look at your vocab list, the word for get good grades is sacar notas buenas. Well, we're going to slightly alter that word to say saca buenas notas because she's actually exhibiting that behavior. It's not something that she needs to do or she should do, it's something she's already doing. So we took off that letter R at the end of the word and put saca buenas notas. All right, now for you to try an example on your own. ¿Es Zach un estudiante bueno o malo? ¿Por qué? Looking at the picture, seems like he's daydreaming about playing video games. Take a moment to write your response. All right. If you wrote, Zach es un estudiante malo porque no presta atención, that is correct. First, you wrote Zach's name, and then you put whether he is a good student or a bad student. Because he is a male, we use the masculine form of all nouns and adjectives. Un estudiante malo. Then, he wasn't paying attention, so we put no presta atención. Again, we dropped off that R at the end of the word because it's something that Zach is currently doing. It's not something that he should or needs to do. Now, the next example is slightly different because it's talking about you. What type of student are you? ¿Eres tú un estudiante bueno o malo? ¿Por qué? Well, looking at this picture, we're pretending this is you. We're going to say that you're a good student because you're reading this book. So to say that you are a good student, you want to say, I am a good student. Remember that I am in Spanish is yo soy. Now, if you are a female, you're going to say una estudiante buena. If you're a male, you're going to say un estudiante bueno. Then you want to elaborate on your rationale and say por qué. If you can recall from a previous unit, the word for to read is leer. But again, we're going to alter that verb because we're talking about ourselves. We're saying I read. And to say I read, we use leo. Whenever we're talking about something that we do, we use the letter O. All right, try the next example on your own. All right, if you wrote, yo soy una estudiante mala porque interrumpe al profesor, you are correct. And this concludes our notes segment. Thank you so much.